George Alexander Trebek was born to George Edward Trebek and Lucille Lagace Trebek. Originally, George's last name was Terebeychuk, but he changed it to Trebek to match his cousin Mike's when he migrated to Canada from the Ukraine and needed to get a job. Lucille was a native French Canadian and a very conservative and intelligent woman. She and George were very different, and their marriage wouldn't last into Alex's teenage years. Their marriage was a shotgun marriage as she became pregnant with Alex. 2 years after he was born, they added a daughter, Barbara, to their family. Though they didn't divorce, they did separate, and Lucille moved to the United States to live with her sisters. Alex Trebek had a very normal childhood. He grew up in a middle-class family where his mother stayed home and took care of him and his sister while his father worked long hours as the pastry chef at the Nickel Range Hotel. While he didn't get in much trouble as a child, he did have some narrow escapes from getting seriously injured. In one instance, Alex decided he was going to make his own parachute and attempted to float off the roof. He ended up with lots of bumps and bruises but no broken bones. Another near miss was when he was berating his sister for going out on the iced-over river. He went out to check the thickness, fell in, and swam to the wrong side. He had to walk nearly a mile to get home, and it caused dramatic pain in his knees that would last for years. In his youth, he attended a French primary school. At one point, he had a confrontation with a teacher and switched to the English school. This didn't last long. He missed his friends, didn't fit in since he was bilingual, and ended up switching back to his old school, but his teacher never bothered him again. For secondary school, he attended an all-boys boarding school. But due to his attitude, he was asked not to come back for his senior year. Realizing this wasn't going to be a good choice for him, he and his dad drove the 250 miles to the school and begged the dean to give him a second chance and let him finish his last year there. They did, and he graduated. With no money for college, he enlisted in the Canadian Armed Forces, but after 3 days he decided that wouldn't work and left. Eventually, he attended the University of Ottawa and got a degree in philosophy while he worked as a broadcaster for the CBC, Canadian Broadcasting. Like most young people, Alex first worked with his father. He would work in the kitchen of the Nickel Range Hotel and load the dishwasher and help with making recipes. One summer, his dad helped him to get a bellhop job. It lasted until he overslept and missed his shift. Alex Trebek took that as a hard lesson and made it a lifetime priority to always be 10 minutes early to any engagement or job. Punctuality became extremely important to him. Another summer, he went to the United States to visit his mom and aunt and ended up working as apartment maintenance for the summer. But he was fired from that job for lounging around reading magazines rather than getting all of his work done. Eventually, he found a love of broadcasting and applied at 2 places where he was rejected for his youth and inexperience before the CBC hired him as a temporary broadcaster for the season. But he worked his way into a full-time job taking over for the holidays so the married men could be home with their families. This would lead him to broadcast television shows in Toronto for the CBC and eventually get noticed and asked to come to La by Alan Thicke to host game shows. Trebek was the host of 7 different game shows and several variety shows before he became the host of Jeopardy in 1984. Alex Trebek was married twice in his lifetime. The first to Elaine Calais Trebek from 1974 to 1981. They divorced amicably and he was stepfather to her daughter Nicole. He always said that Nicole was his daughter by osmosis, and he bought the house across from Elaine when they got divorced. Later, Alex met Jean, a woman 24 years younger than him, and married her in 1990. They had 2 children together, Matthew and Emily. He said he never knew fear until he became a husband and father because then he had something to lose. Alex got along well with her parents, which were his age. Jean was accredited with making him a softer version of himself, of bringing out the best in him, and he gave her full credit for making him a gentler man. Alex Trebek met many famous people and traveled the globe. He had several special moments in his life. Notable people in his life were Father John, who showed Alex how much he cared by helping him when he was short on money and never giving up on him and seeing him for the true person he was. He had a deeply loving relationship with his father. Though he resented his mother at first for the separation, he and she made peace, and she lived most of her 95 years with Alex and his family. Alex had a half-brother that his mother gave up for adoption that he talked to sporadically but never had a relationship with. He was there for his father's passing and held his sister's hand while she died of breast cancer and woke up moments after his mother passed. Charities played a massive part in Alex Trebek's life. He traveled to Africa, where he said that he felt like he had come to the origin of man many times on charitable efforts. Initially, he just donated money to good causes, but his accountant told him he could escape paying more taxes by using the money for charities, so he established a foundation. The foundation has done many beautiful things such as build medical buildings and schools for young girls so they aren't forced to wed or get circumcised. The Trebek Foundation has saved small communities from dying, small businesses from collapsing, and helped dig wells that weren't contaminated by animals. Trebek said he wanted to be thought of as a good man, a good husband, and a good father. 2 days a week, Alex spent 11-hour days recording Jeopardy! He met many brilliant people and was constantly in awe of the intelligence demonstrated by the contestants. Contrary to many thoughts, he never got to personally know any of the contestants. Even Ken Jennings was only known to him through the brief conversations they had while filming the show. He spent commercial breaks and time in between talking to the audience and making them feel a part of the show and letting them ask him questions. Trebek played an enormous role in the running of Jeopardy by producing it and hosting it. He reviewed 350 questions and clues for each recording day and would change the wording and actively participate in the creation of questions and answers when possible. Frank Sinatra was a huge fan and he suggested they create a category of just Sinatra questions. Sinatra sent him a personal thank you letter for doing so. Staying humble was important to Alex Trebek. He recalled a time when they were traveling the country searching for contestants and a guy who took the test for the show had no idea who Trebek was. Another life lesson for Trebek was to always be willing to compromise and work together and not be too firm in your beliefs that you couldn't listen to someone else's. He never looked back with regrets and he never planned too much for the future. He truly liked to live in and experience the moment. He called it his warm bath theory, that life should just be sunk into like a warm bath, not splashing in haphazardly or testing with your toes, but just sinking into life and letting it envelop you in the moment. Aside from meeting dozens of celebrities, from athletes to movie stars, Alex Trebek lived a simple and satisfying life. He started out his journey in this world in Canada and eventually made his way to the United States. Throughout his lifetime, he was an avid learner, an explorer, living for the moment, and trying to make sure he left a good impact on those around him. From his youth, which was filled with typical scrapes and childhood moments, to his adulthood, Trebek writes of life that mirrors that of many others. His memoir leaves the world understanding that the aloof persona portrayed on Jeopardy was just that, a persona, as he was a deeply gentle human who lived for his wife and children.